Why do we generally prefer games to be as close to finished as possible before they're released? By buying a game, or any product really, you are investing time, money, and trust. Typically, we would like to spend money wisely, have time invested well, and our trust not be misplaced. We would like to not waste money on something broken, and have that something be worth our time. By buying a game, you are placing trust that you are purchasing a finished product. If we buy a game or product expecting it to be X quality, and it turns out to be Y quality, then faith in that company's ability to make a competent product has been betrayed. This, along with the seemingly current trend among AAA developers of pushing microtransactions and loot boxes, turning their games into cheap attempts at cash grabs as opposed to creating a good game and telling a compelling story. An example of this being Battlefront 2. Players and fans seeing the title, and instead of seeing an attempt at a remastered, enticing Star Wars game, they see an equivalent of an ATM machine that violates the integrity of fair multiplayer game with a cheaply nailed-on campaign. A company should never be encouraged to sell or attempt to profit off of incomplete work and then go further and either not finish it or not fix it. By allowing them to do that, we are saying to them, it is okay to take advantage of us. We will buy anything. However, this very topic is a case-by-case thing, as every situation is different. There are exceptions. For instance, it is acceptable to release a game in an early access alpha release where the developers simply ran out of money to continue development. You will commonly see 5 types of game releases that aren't finished games. Early access alpha, where devs released what they had and are continuing development, utilizing consumer feedback and using the money from the purchases to continue development. Perpetual alpha, early access alpha game that, despite what devs say and do, will stay in alpha no matter how many updates the game goes through. Released but unfinished, games that are released as final products but are clearly far from a finished state get refunded, and devs have to fix it sometimes from the ground up, i.e., Cyberpunk and Batman Arkham Knight. Fixed but nothing changes, games that remain broken in one variation or another despite the devs' fixes, i.e., Skyrim. And abandoned. These are the ones that just kind of walk out onto the field and die. Devs release them in a complete dumpster fire of an unfinished state and make absolutely no attempt to fix it, and just rake in the money that they make from all future sales. The game that we are talking about today is unfortunately part of that last category. Hello and welcome, my name is Bowiehunter, and today I want to talk about something a little special. Years ago I made a review of LEGO Star Wars 2 for the DS, and it is my most viewed video on the channel to this day. And I have no idea why it got so much attention. For this video I would like to revisit this topic because that video that I made before was entirely on a whim, and I barely tried. I feel I can do better. So this video is obviously a lot longer and going to be leagues more analytical. Spoiler alert, I still think it sucks. Oh yeah, in one of my videos I said the game was a port, and someone left a comment saying it wasn't a port, and I responded to it saying it was. After talking with some people about it, I was wrong, so I do apologize for that. Now I'll say here, there's a difference between you liking a game and a game being good. We are going to be looking at it being good, not whether people liked it. I value objective information. It is perfectly fine if you like this game, but media can be bad in subjective ways, and it can be bad in objective ways that can be measured, discussed, and explained. And I will stand by my claim here, LEGO Star Wars 2 for the DS is an objectively poorly developed game. Also, I've been told many times to play the Game Boy Advance version of the game. I would absolutely do that, but I can't find it. Not for purchase or emulation. So I'm going to structure this video where I will lay out my thoughts and go into why this game is particularly poor in quality and is an unfinished game. And then we will look at reviews from IGN and Metacritic, and then look at some comments from my first video about this, because there's a few that I want to talk about. Now, to preface the main standard that I'm working with, LEGO games like this, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, etc., will take the movies, so in this case, episodes 4, 5, and 6, and make the cutscenes in between levels almost identical to the movies, as you'll see with Vader choking out Captain Antilles, and here Tarkin blowing up the planet. These games maintain a level of recognition between it and the movie that it is a game of, and an adaptation should strive to accurately portray its source material. The console version does this very well. So keeping that in mind, let's look at LEGO Star Wars 2 for the DS. So I played this game on 3 different systems: my DS Lite, my 3DS, and on my PC via emulation. I acknowledge that there can be graphical inconsistencies while playing an emulation of a game. There is a very distinct possibility that some things will be broken. However, every issue that I have seen on my emulation version has shown up on my physical version. Every graphical issue was present on my actual game. I would say that the only thing that I saw different was that the emulation skipped the Cloud City opening cutscene. However, my DS game skipped the cutscene at the end of episode 5, so there goes that. But what I can really say is that the most amount of differences that I saw from the emulation version compared to my DS copy was on the Battle of Endor mission. One camera angle is different. This Ewok rescue counter that's super helpful for you to know what to do in this level, it's not there in the DS version. The camera doesn't get stuck here. This cutscene doesn't skip. The buttons are replaced with switches, and the camera angle in the ATST is fixed. And to add on to that, my computer is not a joke. This is what some would consider to be a pretty powerful machine. For my PC nerds out in the audience, I am running a Ryzen 9 3900X with a Zotac 2070 Amp Extreme using 64 gigabytes of RAM at 3200 megahertz. If we were to say that some of the issues with the game, like the camera speed slowing down, is a direct result of the underpowered hardware in the DS, I find it extremely strange that I can get the exact same issues on my PC that is definitely not underpowered, particularly when playing this game on it. The footage that you'll see in this video is from the emulation, because it's easier for me to record. Now, I understand that this game was made by a different developer, Amaze Entertainment, and I have to say this kind of quality doesn't exactly amaze me. So overall, just in general, the gameplay itself was okay. The controls weren't terrible. I didn't have too many complaints about any of the gameplay styles, in contrast with the Complete Saga DS, where I was not too happy with the flying levels, and while I was okay with the side scrollers, I think more could have been done in that game. That said, this game definitely has its moments. This game reminds me more of a cheap mobile game than a DS game, just with the way the characters were designed and the levels were detailed. But for now, let's talk about the gameplay. So, you know how stormtroopers will follow you if you use a grapple point? They don't do that here. This is a really odd way to convey to the player that Leia is telling R2 that he needs to leave. And I said it once before, and I'll say it again. Please explain what the hell this is supposed to be. So here's Luke. What's he looking at? I don't know. Anyway, he gets punched down the hill and you start the level by sliding down the hill. Also, here's the spot where Luke got punched, which really makes me wonder why they chose to use this shot. Is this supposed to be an intense chase scene where the Falcon cleverly outmaneuvers the TIE fighters? Because that doesn't happen. The TIE fighters just changed direction and flew directly into the asteroids. So far, the best level is Bespin. It's the most recognizable from the other versions. It has a background, it has reflections. Now when I say reflections, I mean they just took the time to design the floor so it looks like it's reflecting the walls. Cloud City, you need to use R2-D2 to deactivate the force field. And I won't blame you if you don't figure that out, because these absolutely do not look like R2 terminals, or droid terminals for that matter. So why would you assume that this is something for R2 to interact with? The Vader fight is less than spectacular. You flail and don't jump, because if you jump, he'll stop you by force choking you. Oh look, finally a recognizable cutscene. Battle of Endor. Who made this? Whose idea was it to add swinging logs in these ridiculous camera angles? So this bit here, I was swinging down and I got to this log, so of course I jumped on it. I thought this was the way to go, and I spent a few minutes just failing over and over again. Because spoiler alert, that's not the right way to go. We'll talk about this in the design section, but the reason why I wasn't making it is because the platform's too high. Or at least that's the only reason I can come up with, because as soon as I tried to jump on the log from the platform, I landed it just fine. And you saw before, I was even at the very edge of the log before I jumped, and it looked like Han should have made it. And in fact, I'll even argue that I absolutely should have made that jump. But no. Also, this part of the game is going to be mentioned again in the glitches section. Now, I have concluded that this game has either been updated once or a few times since I bought my copy, because on the emulation version that I have, this issue was quote-unquote fixed. They didn't remove the log, but they put a grapple point there. And finally, after we blow up the Death Star's core via Mario Tunnel growing out of it, we enter the final level, and apparently there's a whole strategy on how you're supposed to beat Palpatine. Using it only knocks off one heart at a time, so it goes way faster if you just smack him. Also, I hope you weren't thinking that playing through the game unlocks Darth Vader. Nah, y'all gotta pay. Hand over the money. And if you beat the entire game, you're only 30% done with the whole thing. Now, considering that we are almost at 15 minutes already, I am making the executive decision to split this into multiple videos. So in the next video, we will pick this back up with design. In the meantime, perhaps you should consider subscribing so you don't miss it. It's free. Like the video if you liked it, dislike if you disliked it, and I will see you in part 2.